Hello again. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Marshall Sanders returning to you once again to do a video on the white matrix. I believe I will consider titling this something like From Washington to Lincoln. Those are the presidents that are most popular and most heard of in this country. In my bid to tear down some of this white matrix and to build up, provide solutions to the rights and the wrongs of this country. So, what I'd like to do first, something a little unusual first today, break the mood because I think the things I will say next are going to be depressing to a lot of you who are still in the white matrix, who believe that the things in which you've been told is true when it could be easily proven the opposite is true. So I'm gonna start you off with a nice little joke here that I made up here this morning. Bear with me if it's not perfect because again I simply just made it up. Uh, Now, a certain rich man came home in the middle of the day having married a much younger wife, and he shows up and he says, "Honey, sit down at the dining room table." And so she looked at him and she said, "Well, you seem so serious." He said, "This is very serious." So she sat down at the table and he went to the door because the doorbell had rung. So he went to the door and there was the attorney, there was the lawyer. And he brings the lawyer in and he sets him down. And then he goes out and he brings another friend of the family. That friend of the family comes in and a friend of the family sits down also at the table. So you have the young bride, you have the rich man, you have the friend of the rich man, and you have the attorney. So what happened was the rich man starts off and he goes, "Listen, I know for sure, woman, wife, that you have been cheating on me." And she steps back and "I'm appalled. How dare you say that to me?" And he goes, "Listen, I know that you have been having sex with someone." And she denies it. So he brings out a tape from his lawyer and he says, "You sure you need to see all of these things?" She said, I have no idea what you're talking about." And so then the attorney gives him the tape. He sticks it in, ready to pray, and he says, "Are you sure that you are not sleeping with someone else?" She says, "I'm appalled that you would say I'm sleeping with someone else." So he then goes and he puts in a tape, and there's a tape with her having sex with his best friend, the guy that he had just let into the home, who sat down also at the table. And so the woman looks up and she's just horrified at what she's seeing. And she looks at her husband dead in the eye and says, "How dare you? How dare you accuse me of things that I never did?" And the husband's astonished. He's like, "You're literally looking at this tape. You're looking at the tape of the actual sex acts that you're doing. You're caught red-handed. Not only have you been caught red-handed with this little tape, I have 30 more tapes of you doing the same thing. So the woman looks now at the lawyer who's sitting at the table. She says, I just I just don't know what to say. But if you're a lawyer, I want you to represent me in this case because I've had enough. Do you see what my husband is accusing me of? And the lawyer is also astonished that this woman doesn't get it. You're caught, ma'am, he says. Your husband has every right to ask for a divorce. And the woman now looks at the man who she's been having an affair with, the friend, and she said, honey, we need to hire a lawyer. And everyone's confused except for this woman, apparently. She goes, see, this is why I want a divorce. I never had sex with him, nor have I ever slept with him. The only thing I've ever done was to make love with him for a few hours every day for the last 6 months. We never had sex, nor have we ever slept in the same bed together. I know, a little cheesy, but I'm saying this and made this joke to show you that sometimes the question can be phrased in a way to make the answer look like something completely different than what it should be. The woman understood that sleep was another way of saying having sex with or relations she should not have had. She understood that sex was also likewise something that she was doing in that situation. But when she says in her way, if I, it's not sex or sleeping, it's making love. So I can kind of wiggle my way out of it because you didn't phrase the question correctly. A modern day example of that is Bill Clinton. If many of you remember, where it was asked him, "Hey, Bill Clinton, did you have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky?" He goes, in his famous speech, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Monica Lewinsky," and he appeared to be outraged, to be even suggested that he would do such a thing. When testimony came in, as we remember, many of us do who are older and remember this testimony live feed, we remember that Bill Clinton, when the evidence was presented to him, said, well, I don't consider oral sex to be sex. Again, for those who do not remember this, caught that he had sex with a person, but only proven at that point was that he had had oral. She had performed oral sex on him. He goes, oh, I don't consider oral sex to be sex. The ability to distance themselves from truth and facts by saying you did not ask the question correctly to my mind, even though I knew exactly what the question was. This is called the white matrix. The ability to have all the evidence and all the knowledge of what you're being accused of, while simultaneously telling yourself, I am not only not guilty of this, but you should feel guilty for even accusing me of such a thing. It's a hammer beaten against a boulder. This white matrix is so strong and engraved in our culture and in our minds in America that it is something that really I must continue to do my best to show you how very bad it is. So I'm going to briefly get into some of these things, but let me digress into, before this video takes too long, let's go into this with Washington. You know, the best way for a person to be found out or be considered are those who closest to him. I mean, it's easy for you and I in a history book and others to actually start to say great things or bad things about a person and make our own evaluations on a person. So a personal example is my dad was one who was violent to myself and my family. Uh, I could dare say that as my childhood, it was filled in that other terror and fear for my life. However, even during those same times when I feared for my life, my dad, those who call themselves friends, neighbors, and many others, would actually come to me and tell me how great of a dad I had. Why? Because they didn't know him at all, but they perceived they knew him. So that's kind of our situation. We can believe that we know these presidents, and I'll be the first to tell you, we can only go by the information, as much information as we 100% know, and then make our own evaluations. And again, like I always tell you, I would love for you to make your own evaluations on these things. I'm simply trying to give you the facts. And I'm pretty sure I'm one of, if not the only person who's only giving you these facts without trying to make you think the way I think. I'm not trying to make you think the way I want you to think. I want you to think. Just think. But think with the actual information and as much information so that you can come to your best conclusion. So no matter what position you fall on, support, oppose, you can at least show evidence that makes up what you think. So let's get into some quotes. I'm going to read a few things really quick. Um, we're going to start with George Washington and move forward to Lincoln. These are some things that are actually said by those who knew Washington far better than you and I, those who were actually supposed to be friends who fought with him and other things. Although I think the label of friends is probably not as something that adequately describes the real relationship between the so-called founding fathers. So without further ado, penned on July 30th, 1796, Thomas Paine, the great known Thomas Paine, the founding father, said, "It is laughable to hear Mr. Washington talk of his sympathetic feelings, who has always been remarked, even under among his friends, for not having any." I'm gonna say that again because my phone apparently likes to beep at the wrong time. But it says again, "It is laughable to hear Mr. Washington talk of his sympathetic feelings, who has always been remarked, even among his friends, for not having any. The character for which Mr. Washington has attempted to act in the world is a sort of non-describable, chameleon-colored thing called prudence. It is, in many cases, a substitute for principle, and is so nearly applied to hypocrisy that it easily slides into it. For those who are not so understanding of that, it is just a kind way, a gentleman's way of saying it's laughable for this guy to even attempt to say that he has some kind of actual genuine sympathy. He's never had sympathy. And to even say, even to allude that he has sympathy is easy. Anybody can tell. It's just hypocrisy. Okay, another one wrote, there's a poet named Joe Barlow, extremely popular during that time. He said, take from the mind the coldest, hardest stone. It needs no fashion. It is Washington. But if you chisel, let your strokes be rude, and on his breast engrave ingratitude. I mean, for those who are, I love poetry. Well, I don't love poetry, but I love writing poetry. But in this sense, he's basically just saying this man's heart is like a block of a cold stone. There is none. And even if you beat upon it, you wouldn't possibly get into it. Those are two quick quotes that I would like to say about John, uh, I'm sorry, excuse me, George Washington. Also, Beckley, another one said, will not the world be led to conclude that the mask of political hypocrisy has been alike worn by Caesar, a Cromwell, and a Washington? But one of my favorite quotes about George Washington is by a Philadelphia General uh, advertiser, a newspaper columnist, probably perhaps one of the most, if not the most popular during the time, said, he is but a man, and certainly not a great man. These are things mentioned about George Washington. Now, I don't want to go into too many quotes concerning him, but I want to set a boundary, namely on those two presidents, just to give you a kind of purview of these two and between these two. Let's go a little bit more. I would like to go with some of the founding fathers themselves. Now, here's a quote. The president is fortunate to get off just as the bubble is bursting, leaving others to hold the bag. A resentful Thomas Jefferson complained in a letter sent that year to James Madison. He will have his usual good fortune of reaping credit from the good arts of others and leaving them that of his errors. Another was saying, the guy um, is getting credit for things he didn't do, and then the things that he does wrong, he basically passes that off to us other people. Okay, let's see if I can find a couple more for you. Apologize, I do not have this in order. But okay. This what even John Adams. This is the last one for former President Washington. Even John Adams, who once called Washington an exemplification of the American character, because and why he called him this was, basically Washington was a chameleon, as I mentioned earlier, of sorts. He was really good. He was one of the most compulsive liars in history. And I don't want you to come to that evaluation because I want to provide you the opportunity, excuse me, of finding that out for yourself. However, I'm telling you what the mindset for these gentlemen were who knew this. And so this is what they have to say concerning them. So this is what he said in his 1812 letter that he was, and speaking of Washington, George Washington, too illiterate, unlearned, and unread for his station and reputation. Now, I don't want to delve too much into that. But let's go with Washington. Lincoln. Pardon me. You're going to love this quote because I think many of us will say um, that George Washington, excuse me, I had a letter I wanted to take a look at. Give me 1 second. Okay, great. I think many of us uh, would want to know the things about the friends, what they really thought. When we think about Lincoln, we think of Lincoln being the one who freed the slaves. Although field order, I believe it was 105, um, for the 40 acres and a mule for reparations did not come to fruition. Apparently, under Lincoln at least, that was an option, or appeared to be. But let's hear what Lincoln has to say about his intent with the slaves. Because we've heard so many things from history concerning Lincoln's uh, great heroism and activism in freeing the slaves. And we just heard quotes about those who knew George Washington, or now what they really thought of him. Let's hear Lincoln, his direct words, because this should conclude anyone who thinks that Lincoln had a position that we've been told in the white matrix. Please listen to this carefully. If you want me to, just let me know in your comments. I will link the quote, the sources, and anything else you need. But I want you to please listen to this quote. This is directly from the lips of Lincoln himself. And I quote, I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of the making voters or jurors of negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I would say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And insomuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And as much as any other man am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. I'm going to read that again because I kind of butchered it. But I'm going to read that faster because I was trying to make so much emphasis I actually didn't read that well. So let me read that again. And I can link this in the description if you need to clarify what kind of person Lincoln was and why the white matrix is so dangerous. Listen to this again. I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. That I am not, nor ever have been in favor of the making of voters or jurors of negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I would say, in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And insomuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And as much as any other man, I am in favor of having a superior position assigned to the white race. Clear, clear, clear. That's his own words. I don't know if any of you have family, but I'm sorry for those who haven't had family, who were raised as orphans or in foster care and such other things. But hopefully you have someone close in your life, spouse, child, cousin, um, school child, as a teacher or something, whoever. I would like to ask you for this moment to to think about that person, especially me. I have a 26-year-old son, but me personally, to me, he's always been, the 6 month, kid that is literally the center of my heart, absolute center of my heart. Even as a 26-year-old man, I see him as my little heart, and I always called him my little heart. And as a man, I think that's the strongest element that you can do is always let the ones who you love, who you work for, who you care for the most, let them know that you love them and never hold back that you love them. But I want you to look and think about that person or persons, how much joy they bring you, how much you want the best for them. And, you look at them and you just want the world to be brought to their feet because of your love and how you feel about them. Now, this is what I want you to do, if you don't mind. Think about if that person is called inferior. Think about if they're called. Think about if someone said, hey, I would never, under any circumstance, want to give them the rights to have any social or political equality, that they should be considered nothing but glorified cattle, that the opportunities in their life should be muted or destroyed, and it should not ever be considered, that the dreams and the aspirations you had for them should never ever be considered reasonable or acceptable. Would that piss you off? When that beautiful, wonderful person comes to you and says, I have aspirations to be a doctor, a lawyer, um, a nurse, a congressman, someone who saves the rainforest, or to do some remarkable, wonderful things on earth. And someone tells you, well, they're not going to be presented that opportunity because they are inferior. Are you starting to understand the way that people of color have been told that they should be considered themselves in this society? But I'm not finished with this. Think about now that you have to read something like this from this person. And if that's not enough, the neighbors around you, the people around you, those in that society, then erects a monument to the greatness of this person, thereby justifying the things that this person has said and maybe obviously done. So you're glorifying a person who just told you, and I want you to think of that person again that you love so much. That person's inferior, and neither should they be given any social, political, or any future equivalent to others. So, do you really think that when people of color go to the Lincoln Memorial and they see a big statue of this man, that we should think positively about this man? This is a symptom of the white matrix. It's not the only symptom of the white matrix, but this is just to give you a little perspective on how bad the white matrix is. It's really bad. And we want to tear this down for the present and the future of this country. Otherwise, we won't have a country. I would never, under any circumstance, imagine looking at your loved one and saying, you should have no opportunity. You should have. Not that you can't have. You should have no opportunity to be considered human. You should be considered subhuman. And all of your opportunities should be limited in comparison because your color of your skin is not correct. Or you're not tall enough. Or you're not some other limitation. And if you're told that, and your parents are told that, and your grandparents are told that, and your great greats told that, and they made sure there was a system in play to make sure those things didn't happen, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think a person should just simply accept that? Or would you fight for your loved ones? That's the question I posed to you today. I would like for you all to think about that more today. I apologize for being a little rough with this video today, um, but I just thought I'd want to make that point more today. We're all human beings. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And sure, we can be a little critical of each other. We should be a little critical of each other as long as we come up with solutions for each other also. But this telling a nation of people that who's always been persecuted and victimized, at least in this country is what I'm talking about. And time would not permit how this country has persecuted some of the greatest people ever, in the Quakers, the white Quakers, who made it possible. It would be zero way possible to have had any freedom of the slaves, any underground railroad, any um, civil rights movement, any success in any of those things without the Quakers risking their lives and putting their resources and all their hearts, because they, while many others believe, just like Lincoln believes, and most in this country believe, like Lincoln had believed, these people went out there and proved otherwise. They didn't say, black man, white man, you're inferior. They said, we're brothers. In respect of God, we know that you are our brothers and sisters. So I want to give a shout out to those Quakers and the descendants of Quakers. You have my love, you have my respect, and you have my thanks. and others, of course. I'm not discounting other whites of if you want to call them that, who have done equally, if not just as, maybe more individually to you all of every color and every race, and who have looked past that kind of mindset and have thrown that out the window. That's absolutely demonic and a lie. To you, I also give love and much thanks. And so within this video, I'm going to end it here, but I'm going to bring in more information tomorrow on some of the presidents, hopefully, and also the continuation of the white matrix policies that have us where we are. And it's not to harp on the white matrix policies. I'm simply trying to lead up to a point where you understand that from step to step, just like you're going up a step from the bottom of the step to reach the front door, I'm taking you step by step to show you how it's not like there was another path laid for blacks in which we could have walked. There was no other option. Life didn't stop and then there was a break in between and blacks had an opportunity and then there was another chance. No, it's always been an uphill climb and steps that's been laid out for us in this country, that is, and it has led us to where we are today. And we are trying to get the solution. Again, the only reason I'm doing this is to give a little backdrop to history and how we got here in the first place, so that I can then provide a solution. And oh, this solution that I have for us is, I think that you'll be amazed at how good this is for the people of all races. Good for the people. We're one people, no matter what the politicians and the idiots and the racists or anyone else or the white matrix people, we're one people. And that is how we should see ourselves, in my humble opinion. I'd like to thank you again. Say good morning, good afternoon, good evening again. To all of you, as always, I wish shalom, peace.